So components do not absolutely have to be classes, right? They can also be functions under certain circumstances. And those are called stateless functional components. So one of the conditions you have to meet in order to make your component a function is hinted at right there in the name. Stateless functional components. They must be stateless. If you need state, that is to say, if your component needs to manage its own data ever, then you can't use a function. You have to use a class. But if you don't need state, you may be able to create a stateless functional component. There's another condition that we won't get into just yet. Something called lifecycle methods. If you need lifecycle methods, it has to be a class. But we don't even know what those are yet. So yeah, Acrobat could be a function instead of a class. So we could say const Acrobat equals an arrow function. In which case you do not need a render method. The whole thing is the render method. Whatever your function returns, that's what will render. So instead of making it a class with a render method, you can make the whole darn component a single function. That is the render method. So just return some JSX from here, and that works. We're not quite done. One other thing. So we've said that props are basically like arguments being passed into your component. Now they are literally an argument being passed into your component. We don't have this.props now that we're not a class. Because, I mean, this is just a function. There's nothing magic happening here. So if this.props isn't being set anywhere, this.props isn't anything. So instead what happens when you use a stateless functional component, a component that is just a single function, the props get passed in as an argument. So make sure you put it in the argument list, and then you don't have this.props, you just have props. So inside a class, it's this.props. Inside a stateless functional component, it's whatever you put here. And it's just an argument, right? I could totally call this pancake breakfast, and that would be my props. And my props would be called pancake breakfast, but that's really silly. Call it props. And yeah, it works just like it did before. So stateless functional component. There are several advantages to doing this. So if we can make a stateless functional component, we will. So we'll only use a class when we know we need to use a class. Deal? So components can either be a class or they can be a function.